Hey everyone, welcome to another BTM screencast. I know what you're thinking. This is a masonry marking period, but we have something in the carpentry book. Well, this one actually does a better job than what the masonry does, so, well, let's just get started. So, this is Chapter 76, Underlayment and Resilient Tile. So, underlayment, this is what we're going to be looking at in this marking period, especially for this performance assessment that goes along with this. So underlayment is plywood, strand board, or hardboard, or particle board. So we're going to be using a type of hardboard. It's usually installed on the top of the subfloor. So if you remember, the subfloor that you have is 3/4 inch T&G OSB, and we're going to be putting the hardboard on top of it. It's installed in various thicknesses to make sure that different floors are flush. So you don't want a tripping hazard. You want to make sure that your floor, when it's installed, is nice and flat. So here's a quick diagram of what that looks like, and you can see on this part here, let's get this laser pointer on. So here we have the structure of your floor, right? And you can see right here, we have our plywood subflooring joints. So that's highlighted here and here. And what we want to make sure is that when we put our underlayment on, that we cover those joints, right? Because we don't want those joints carrying up through. We want to make sure that they're lapped. Because if you have a joint on top of a joint, then you're just going to have a joint and it could heat. And you just don't want that. So keep in mind that always cover your joints, always lap them. And that's what we're looking at here. So again, you could see that even here, our underlayment is over the joints of our subfloor. Here's the tile that we'll be installing, and you can see, same thing, you can want to try to lap your joints. Installing underlayment. So always make sure that your subfloor is clean. I mean, this sounds like common sense, but when you go to put that on top, you want to make sure that there's not nails or debris because it won't sit flush, it won't sit nice, and there's going to be all kinds of deviations in the floor, and you want to try to avoid that at all costs. Cover with asphalt lapped 4 inches at edges. This one we're not going to worry about. Always stagger the joints between the subfloor and the underlayment, and that's what we did in the previous slide. Over a board subfloor, install the face grain across the boards. Now again, this is not a type of subfloor that we cover. The one that we have in lab is the one that we're using, so just focus on that. In all other cases, the face grain is across the floor joists and fasten according to specifications. So there's going to be manufacturing specifications, and they're going to tell you on what centers that your fastener should be placed. Here's a quick chart letting you know where the fasteners need to be placed, and this is a pretty good idea. So depending on the thickness of it and the type of fastener that you're using will dictate the centers for all of your fasteners. Resilient tile flooring. Now this is made from vinyl. There's colors and textures and patterns are available. So on your way to the class today, when you're walking through and you see all that wonderful tile flooring, that's a type of resilient, right? It's a type of vinyl tile. They usually come in 12 by 12 squares and thicknesses between a 1/16 and an 1/8 of an inch thick. So you can see that this gentleman here is getting ready. He's prepping around, it looks like a clean out, and he'll be putting tile in there. See how clean this floor is? This is kind of what you want. It's free of debris, there's no issues on it. And if you look in here, they're actually going to be cutting around this and they're using a template to cut for the tile. So the layout portion of this, now when we do this for your performance assessment, you're going to have to lay it out square, which I know everyone's a fan of. Snap lines across the floor at right angles to each other. So we want to make sure that these intersect, right? You're using a square tile, so you want square lines. If you're setting your lines and they're at a skew, then your tile is going to be at a skew. And nobody really wants tile at a skew unless that's what you're aiming for. In this lab, we're not. So square. The size of the tiles determines how the lines are snapped. We'll cover this more once we get into the demonstration portion for the performance assessment. We won't be applying adhesive, so this is for that specific type of tile. We're going to be using thin set, so it's a little bit different. And again, we'll get more in depth with this once we start the demonstration for the performance assessment. Here you can see this guy is really going at it. He has all the adhesive spread for all the tile that he's going to be doing. And you can see there's a hallway here. Let's go back. Something happened. Always make sure that you have a way out. So you could see that this guy did all of this, but he can also sneak out this door. And that's what you want to do. You always want to plan your run. So when you go to lay the tile in your booth, always think of a way out. Don't back yourself into a corner. So when you're laying tiles, apply a tile to an intersection of layout lines with the two adjacent edges all on the lines. This sounds a little confusing, but once we start it, you'll get a better understanding of what this actually looks like once you apply it. Lay edges tight and work towards the walls. Lay the tiles in place instead of sliding them. So you can see the way that he's laying tiles here. So for these, again, we're going to be using a ceramic tile. So we're going to be using a tile cutter. For the resilient tiles, you're able to use a utility knife, or there's a special tool just for it. So you can see on this, he's doing all his infills. So you always want these on the edges, reason being there's less foot traffic there, and you don't want a small piece right here. And when you lay it out and you have small fill-in pieces here, it looks better, right? It's more aesthetically pleasing, and you don't need to worry about the pieces coming up. And this is just showing a way to cut it. So instead of measuring, you can use a template, which is smart. And we'll be getting into this more on using templates rather than measuring for your tiles. Estimating, so this is an important portion, and you'll be using this for a bill of material. So you always use it using some sort of formula, right? We go over this a lot. And here's a quick formula for the way that they do it for the resilient flooring. So they're saying the area to be covered divided by the square foot per carton equals the number of boxes. And we're going to be doing the same thing here, but again, we're using ceramic tile, so it's going to be a little bit different. The 10% waste factor, we're going to factor that in as well. So what that means is if you find something and it's tight, let's say you have a 10 by 10 floor, so it's 100 square feet, and you know you're going to need 100 tiles. Well, sometimes, especially with the ceramic tiles, they can end up coming in broken, or you could drop it, or you miscut, whatever the case is. So figure in another 10%. So for a 10 by 10 area, even though it's a 12 by 12 tile and you have 100 tiles, you want to add 10% on top of that. So then you'd end up having 110 tiles, right? That way, in case, oh, well, the bottom of this one, it was broken, then you have an extra one, and that's important. So to conclude, underlayment is installed on the top of the subfloor. Again, we're going to be using a hard board. It's a cement board, and we have specific fasteners just for it. Resilient tiles can be vinyl, rubber, or cork. So that's something maybe to be familiar with, but we will be using the ceramic tiles. So keep that in mind. Always line up layout tiles and apply lines, fitting them together tightly. So with the resilient ones, we're going to do it tightly. When we start the ceramic ones, we have spacers that we're going to be using because we're going to have to grout in between the joints. So again, keep that in mind. This is very similar, but what we're going to be doing is just slightly different, and that will be covered once we go over the demonstration for your performance assessment. That's it. See you later.